Well, now that I find myself with some time on my hands, I've decided I'm going to need to knock out a couple of little projects. So here on the end of my workbench, I'm going to add a place to store my grinding wheels. So I've got grinding disc and flat disc, wire wheels, cut brushes, stuff of that nature that I kind of just need to get separated. Now I've done something similar to this in my job trailer, and it's one of the best things I ever put in there, because as millwrights and welders, you go through grinding wheels and flat disc and wire wheels all the time, and being able to see at a glance what you have and what you need to replace is just invaluable. So I'm going to do something similar here, and so just an idea for those that are interested in storing their grinding wheels as well. Let's get started. So for this little project, I'm just going to use the material that I have on hand. I'm using 1/2-inch rod that I'm going to cut into about 7-inch pieces, and then we're using a 1/4 by 2 by 2 angle iron. And the angle iron is going to serve to go side to side. We're going to weld it to the inside of the legs of the workbench, and then these are going to be, they'll be drilled first, and then they'll be welded along the back side for extra strength. So let's get started cutting some material. So this is pretty much how the grinding wheels are going to set in there, save for the fact that it's upside down right now. So now I just need to turn it over, get everything aligned, square in the bars, get them tacked in and welded in decent enough, and then we can mount them on the table. The reason that I moved that up another 32nd of an inch was so that when I drilled it
I wouldn't run into the web of the angle iron. That just keeps the drill bit from getting damaged in any way or hurting yourself if that thing were to take off because it got in a bind. Now we can use another angle to keep the bars level. Another 1/4 inch. It's not quite perfect level, but it doesn't have to be. A little square to get them squared in. We're going to leave the same gap up front. We're going to get all 4 of these tacked in. Now that we got them all tacked in and square, we'll just run a little bit of extra weld out here on the end and a little bit on top. That's pretty much all it needs. Is just holding some grinding disc, so there's no need to weld it out full. That should be sufficient. Let's weld all these up and then we'll be ready to mount them.
Okay, now that we've got everything welded up and everything is sitting in there nice and square now, we can get ready to prep the legs of the work table to mount all 3 of these. So as far as separation goes, for 4.5 and 5 inch disc, I'm going to leave them about 6.5 inches separated. If you're making a rack that's going to house 6 inch disc, you might want to go a little further and space them up to about 7 inches apart. That just gives you plenty of clearance between each one so that one disc doesn't run into the others. Now, the reason I like to do it in this method, with all the welds being on the back side, it leaves the front side completely clear and clean. And because I use mostly hubbed grinding wheels, they'll sit nice and flat against that angle iron. I just like that method. It keeps them from rattling as much. They just seat better, in my opinion. So it takes a little bit more time, but the end results are definitely worth it. All right, let's get the legs prepped and start putting these things on. Well, I went ahead and welded this out. I was going to use some 7018, but I thought, it doesn't need it. So I just went ahead and just used 6011 on the ends. So we got it all welded out. Now I just need to get it cleaned up, prep it for paint. Once we got it painted, let it dry for a little while, and then it's going to be ready to load up with our new grinding disc. Well, there's the finished product. Now, I could have spent a little bit more time on cleaning it up and painting it, but you know, it's not a Picasso, it's a grinding wheel rack, so I wasn't too worried about it. I do want to say one thing though. Originally I had said that you should have about a 6.5 inch spacing between the angle irons in order to facilitate putting 5 inch disc on there. Unfortunately, I miscalculated that a little bit. It should have been 7 inch. Because at 6.5, the 4.5 inch grinding disc will slide by one another, but it only gives you about a 1/4 inch of gap between them. So I know in my trailer I set them at 7 inches, and then my bottom row is actually set a little deeper than that because it's set up for 7 inch wheels. So one caveat to keep in mind. Anyway, this is just an idea of what you can do to set up your own grinding rack. This one worked really, really well on the end of the table, and I probably got about a dozen more of these things kicking around here somewhere. Once I get them found, I'll have a place to put them now. My name's Ben. You've been watching the Texas Tool Crib. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you in the next one.